Hello, and welcome to Coffee with Cohen. Today is Monday, May 19th, 2025. Welcome to Coffee with Cohen. I'm Councilman Phil Cohen. I'm broadcasting to you today live from my home in Hoboken. Welcome to this, my 109th Coffee with Cohen community event. Coffee with Cohen is my opportunity to keep in touch with you about important issues affecting our community. Thank you so much for joining me. And Congressman, I just got confirmation that we are in fact live. Today, I'm pleased to welcome a special guest, Congressman Rob Menendez. Congressman Menendez is a lifelong New Jerseyan. He's a proud Hudson County resident who's raising his young family here in Jersey City. Congressman Menendez is in his second term, first elected to the House of Representatives in 2022. He's distinguished himself as a thoughtful advocate for working families, immigrant communities, infrastructure investment, and public safety. He served on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, where he focused on delivering meaningful improvements to our transit systems and protecting and improving the quality of life in our region, and serves on the Energy and Commerce Committee. He's outspoken on issues of equity and justice and a dedicated advocate for Hobokenites and New Jerseyans. Congressman, thanks for joining me today, and thanks for being here on Coffee with Cohen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Congressman, I'd like to discuss an issue that's top of mind for many constituents, non-essential helicopters and their impact on our quality of life and public safety. You and I discussed the scourge of non-essential helicopters, and it even came up with a conversation that we had at the Arts and Music Festival on Washington Street at your booth at the Arts and Music Festival yesterday with a constituent who had documentation to share with us. Recent unanimous resolutions that I know you're familiar with that have been passed by the Hoboken Council that I introduced and in the Jersey City Council unanimously have called for urgent federal and state intervention addressing these concerns in the wake of last month's fatal helicopter crash right off the coast of Jersey City by the Newport neighborhood that served as a wake-up call for many, and the need to finally address this issue. You have taken action on this issue. You introduced legislation, the Improving Helicopter Safety Act, which is a critical piece of legislation that would prohibit non-essential helicopters from flying over a region. I want to thank you for introducing that legislation, Congressman. And I'm wondering if you could talk about it and describe what you hope the bill to accomplish.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your advocacy on the issue of non-essential helicopters as well. So the bill, which is both bipartisan and also a coalition of New York and New Jersey members, would ban non-essential helicopters in a 20-mile radius from the Statue of Liberty. So most of our district and also most of New York City as well, where the greatest number of these tourism helicopter flights take place. And so our thinking behind it was that after we've been working on this issue for our entirety of our time in Congress, we've approached it from a number of different ways, from more limited legislation to what we introduced the other week. And for us is, we've seen the response from the operators after that deadly crash. There was discounts in ticket prices. There was a quote from the operator of that plane who said, "These are machines break." And we know that across the country, air tourism continues to be a challenge for a lot of different communities, and operators continue to engage in it in a way that's dangerous for all of our neighbors. So we felt that this was the appropriate step to take. Essential helicopters, think law enforcement, press, medical flights, they would be able to continue as they should. But this idea of non-essential, mainly air tourism, is something that really impacts all of our constituents, yours and mine. And we know that it's a quality of life issue and also a safety issue. So, proud that we've taken that step on it, but clearly a lot more work to do.
Yeah, and I was heartened to see that it was bipartisan. I saw that Congresswoman Malliotakis was a co-sponsor with you. And I'm wondering what you think is next for this legislation. I know it's so difficult to get anything through Congress with your agenda and all the things, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other issues. Yeah, so, and is there anything that we can do? People reach out and say, Phil, is there any way that we can support this? We think this is great. Is there anything that you think how we could help support this kind of thing?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So right now it's been referred to the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, the committee I served on last Congress. Now Rep Nadler will be there to push for it to move forward in committee so it can get a hearing markup to continue on the legislative process. We're also in conversations with New Jersey senators to see if we can make it bicameral as well. And we're in continuing conversations with other New Jersey, New York delegation members to add additional support to it. But I think as you allude to, right, we had a conversation yesterday, multiple conversations yesterday with Hoboken residents at the Arts and Music Festival. This is an issue that is clearly impacting so many of our residents, and their advocacy is really important.
Yeah.
We've seen measures taken at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, and their continued involvement is really important. We're going to keep driving this. It's an issue that is top of mind for us at all times. So in addition to the legislation, we also sent a letter to the FAA with respect to what's happening at Newark Airport. This is very congested airspace, which is why this has always made me nervous to have these non-essential helicopters. So our letter to the FAA recommended that while they continue to navigate these challenges that they're having with a shortage of air traffic controllers, that they pause all non-essential helicopters in the same airspace. We think that would provide much needed relief to the folks who are managing the airspace and also to all of our residents. I think if people see what a pause in non-essential helicopter feels like with their quality of life, we'd have even more people who'd be advocating for the complete ban. So, we're going to be at this. We know how important it is to our residents, and that means it's a top issue for us.
That's great. And it would be great if the FAA paid attention to this. I know it can be frustrating. At least that's been our experience, trying to get the FAA's focus and attention. I saw you at the NTSB press conference the day after the crash, and I know you've been really right up front dealing with these issues. You mentioned Trenton. I was testifying in front of the Senate Transportation Committee in front of Senator Raj Mukherjee's committee. He and Senator Stack are co-sponsoring, which I think is a very good bill, S-275, which was voted out of committee, would reduce non-essential heliport traffic out of New Jersey heliports by 47%. It's frankly not as good as what you've done, because yours would be, from my understanding, would stop it altogether if it were passed. But I think a 47% increase from people who are suffering would still be appreciated. And I'm sure you're glad to see that your partners in the New Jersey Senate and are also focused on this as well, or local councils. Again, if there's anything that you think that we can do to help support this and your coordination, we stand with you guys and really appreciate your leadership on it.
No, I appreciate what Raj did with, him and Senator Stack. I think the more pressure that we put on at all different levels of government, in addition to the community engagement, gives us the best chance. I'm open to any, right, approaches that will alleviate the challenges that so many families are facing: Jersey City, Hoboken, Bayonne, Weehawken, West New York. And so I think you have to have all options on the table, right? I think an outright ban, to me, just makes a lot of sense. These are companies that aren't really economically benefiting our communities. It's not like a giant workforce that we have who are coming from Hoboken or Jersey City. It doesn't really add to our tourism. I think a lot of these people come from New York to take the flights out. So, I haven't heard a really compelling counter argument for why you shouldn't have an outright ban. But if the state were able to get that significant reduction, I know that would improve the lives of folks today, tomorrow, as soon as it's passed. And that's really what we're focused on, is just trying to get the best outcome that we can as quickly as possible, because we know small children are waking up in the middle of the night. We know people who are working late or working early, their lives are disrupted by it. So, for me, all options need to be on the table. I obviously feel strongly about a ban on all non-essential helicopters in that radius from the Statue of Liberty, but open to anything that would improve the quality of life for folks.
Yeah. Great. Next topic I want to talk about has to do with standing up to the Trump administration. I want to give you credit and acknowledge the fact that you've been a strong outspoken voice to stand up to the Trump administration on a host of issues, including immigration, civil rights, and protecting our democratic institutions, which are under attack, I would say. And I'm wondering, first, if you could share your thoughts on where things stand in Congress right now and your work protecting New Jersey residents from the concerning federal policies that have emerged in the first 100 days of the Trump administration.
Yeah, and it's tough with an administration that also has a majority in the Senate and a majority in the House. Oversight tools that we would have in the majority, the Republicans aren't using, right? Because it's their administration that they're supportive of, even though I think there's ample reason to conduct oversight because of how this administration has conducted itself. So every step of the way, we are pushing back against the overreach of this administration, especially the things that have the most direct harm to our residents. So the challenge with an administration like this one is their flood the zone strategy, right? Like every day they're just trying to overwhelm all of us with the flurry of executive action that they've taken. And we really try to focus on the things that we know are going to impact the greatest number of our residents. So for instance, last week on Energy and Commerce, we had our markup of the Republican, as the president calls it, one beautiful bill, right? That
Right.
does, would completely reshape the federal government. But, $880 billion in cuts, most of that coming from Medicaid. We told stories about people from the district from New Jersey who rely on Medicaid. For those watching, this is NJ Family Care in New Jersey, right? That's the program under which the state administers those Medicaid dollars. We know that 40% of births in the country are covered by Medicaid. We know that folks with long-term disabilities are covered by Medicaid. A lot of in-home care and aid is paid for by Medicaid. And so we know that this would have real harm on our constituents. And so we make the case every single day, and we make it as hard as possible on Republicans to just go along with this. There's a lot of things that were buried inside of that bill that we brought to light, including cuts that are directly targeting Planned Parenthood, a complete giveaway to big tech with a 10-year moratorium on any state laws that regulate AI. Basically, instead of doing real energy permitting reform, they just have these mega energy companies that can pay a one-time fee to basically expedite the whole process without much consideration for the environmental consequences of those projects in districts across the country. So, it's never forgetting who we represent, the issues that matter to them, and making sure that we fight against this administration. One, to push back on the harm that they're causing. I always
Yeah.
say it's really an exercise of keeping the guardrails on. And two, it's providing, right, not just to our residents, but to Americans across the country. So they know that one, this is not normal. Two, that we're not accepting this as normal. But we also want to show them that there's a much better alternative, right? Things where we come together again and focus on the issues that are impacting so many Americans. But in the interim, the other tool that's being fully utilized across the country, and you can appreciate this as a lawyer, is litigation. Because so much of what this administration has done has been by executive action, there are hundreds of cases that have been brought in federal court. And the bottom line for people to know is that Democratic AGs are winning across the country because this is a complete overreach by this administration. It's an erosion of due process. So many things are the bedrock of our country, and the courts are siding not with Democrats, but with everyone who believes that this is unconstitutional. It's a complete overreach by the executive branch, and that Congress has a role to play. The courts have a role to play. That success has been infuriating to the administration, to Republicans, to the point where they're now threatening federal judges, right? And threatening legislation that would completely change the role of the federal judiciary. So, this is what we wake up thinking about. This is what we go to sleep thinking about. It's what we spend our days working on. And, there's a lot of work left to do, but every day we're at it. And thankfully seeing some success in the courts. We continue to push here in the legislative branch to get better outcomes than what Republicans are currently seeking.
So speaking of overreach and outrageous behavior, I'd like to talk about Delaney Hall,
Yeah.
where ICE is detaining immigrants in troubling conditions. And again, I want to thank you for standing up for congressional oversight of the ICE facilities, which is permitted under statute. I've read the statute, which you shared on Instagram very helpfully, and for your strong, clear response to the disturbing arrest of Newark Mayor Ross Baraka. This is just an unbelievable image. And for your standing up and responding to the well-documented physical harassment that you, Congresswoman Watson Coleman, and Congressman McIver experienced that day. It was very important. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about this incident, which to me seems reflective of the Trump administration's larger effort to bully, threaten, and intimidate the administration's critics and frustrating meaningful congressional oversight of executive action.
Yeah, I mean you're exactly spot on. And so I know that folks who are familiar with what happened have seen sort of that awful part of the day, right, where there was a scrum outside the facility. But you already touched on one important fact, right, is that members of Congress have the ability and the right to conduct oversight at DHS detention facilities. That includes unannounced visits, which I've done previously with Congresswoman McIver and Congresswoman Watson Coleman at the Elizabeth Detention Center. I visited the Elizabeth Detention Center unannounced with Senator Kim. There's no issue. So they know we have a right to do this. We've sat down with the ICE officials out of their Newark field office. They know our concern with what's happening from an immigration enforcement perspective and what's happening inside these privately run detention centers. So, there's no surprise that we will continue to conduct our oversight authority. That day, we had already been there for an hour and a half waiting to do our tour. That unfortunate incident occurred. After that, and I think this is important for a lot of people, we went inside and did the tour with the ICE officials that were present throughout all of it, right? So we went to do our job. They made us wait hours to do it. There is an unfortunate circumstance. And even after that, we did what we went there to do, which was to do our job. Now, to your point about that day, it was the mayor of Newark had arrived separately. He's concerned about the operation of Delaney Hall in Newark. The three of us have the right to go inside as we did. And in the middle of all of this, they approached the mayor to say that he had been trespassing. It's the mayor of New Jersey's largest city and three members of Congress, and there was 20 or more masked, armed DHS, ICE, HSI agents who accompanied the 10 or so officials from ICE and from HSI to go engage the mayor. So to me, that's completely unnecessary,
And
right?
Delaney Hall is in Newark,
That's
right,
right. That's
Congressman?
right. And,
Yeah.
and the thing that's important is so the three of us were there to do oversight as we have the legal right to do. The mayor had been going there because him and his inspectors have not been granted access to go inside the building to do inspections, to issue an updated CO, as I understand it. And it makes sense that he would want to. It also is necessary that he be able to, because during our tour, the elevator that we were on broke, right? It did not function, right? Which is separate and apart from our federal oversight. But that's the reason a mayor and his team of inspectors would want to
Yeah.
go into a facility like this. It's going
And
to,
Congressman, you mentioned the CO. That's a certificate of occupancy, right?
correct.
For whether the building is legally inhabitable, correct?
Correct. And
Yeah.
so there's different pockets of issues here, right? But that's always been the mayor's chief concern. And so he has a understandable desire to understand what's going inside Delaney
Yeah.
Hall to make sure that it meets all the different requirements that the city has oversight of. We have the right to go there and ask questions about how they're engaging in their frankly business, right? Because these are privately run detention centers. So this one is run by the GEO group, the one in Elizabeth's Core Civic. And again, just going back to your question, sort of what happened to have that show of force for four elected officials right? To me, it was a clear act of intimidation. They don't want us asking questions. They don't want the mayor showing up. And the point I that came to me after this unfortunate incident occurred was that, as I mentioned earlier, there's an attack on the federal judiciary. They arrested the mayor of New Jersey's largest city. They were physical
And a
with
candidate for governor.
and
And a
a
candidate for
candidate governor,
governor.
and they were physical with the three of us, right?
Yep.
And so my point to people is, how can anyone feel safe in Trump's America if this is how they are engaging with federal judges, mayors, members of Congress? And I do believe it's an attempt to intimidate folks, to silence folks, and it's unacceptable. And it can't be something that people accept as normal, because it is not. We can have policy disagreements. The legislative branch is a great place to have them. But to do what this administration is doing is so far outside the norm. It is so unnecessary and heavy-handed, and we can't allow it to continue. And that's what we will continue to do, is push back against, as I mentioned earlier, the overreach of this administration, because it's just not safe for Americans. And my point to people is, you may not think it's going to get to you or to your family or to your neighbors, but it's shown that they will increasingly inch closer to all of us, right? And that was one of the things that was my biggest takeaway from what happened last Friday, and something that we're going to continue to talk about and make sure that here we do everything to engage with the American people so they know what's going on, and let them know that we're fighting for them and standing up against this administration.
Yeah, it's so important. And again, thank you for doing it and for using
Yeah.
your platform and literally putting your body there. I just think it's so important, and it sends the right message to your constituents and to all of us. I'm wondering if there are other steps that you and your colleagues are taking to ensure the humane treatment of detainees and oversight of ICE operations. You mentioned you've toured the Elizabeth facilities without incident previously. Are there other things that as part of your oversight responsibilities, and that either the Democratic coalition or your party or locally, that things are happening to help protect and oversight these activities?
Yes.
Oversight.
Yeah, so that's something that we've always done after we've done these tours. It had previously been Elizabeth Detention Center, now Delaney Hall. Once we have the opportunity to tour and ask a series of questions, we can bring those back to Washington, either to inform hearings on Homeland Security, where Congressman MacGyver sits, or letters to the administration requesting either additional information or action on things that we see within these now two facilities. That's how we engage on the oversight part of our obligation here in Congress. And, doing those tours really is important to have greater clarity and granular understanding of what the conditions are like, especially given that the number of people that this administration is going to put in those facilities is only going to increase, unfortunately.
Yeah. You mentioned the federal budget earlier. I'd like to turn to it. The federal budget is taking shape. It appears to have been voted out of committee early this morning around 3 a.m. If I read the stories correctly this morning. You've mentioned your serious concerns about Medicaid cuts to the federal budget, among other drastic cuts. I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about what it means for the people that you represent, the people who I represent, what these drastic cuts to essentially give tax breaks to billionaires and the largest corporations. It seems like it is coming in on the backs of people who get Medicaid and Medicare.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly right. And that was one of the arguments we had on Energy and Commerce when we were discussing the bill. And they're from day one, they've said this is fraud, waste, and abuse within the Medicaid. You don't get to $880 billion with rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse. You have to have fewer people on the program. So the CBO estimates are all in about 13.7 million people will lose access to healthcare. And there's like a couple of components to that. One is people that directly fall off Medicaid. a second universe of people that will fall off Medicaid because of work requirements, which I'm happy to speak to because it's a Republican talking point that I think is not actually representative of who is on Medicaid. But if they fall off Medicaid and that it's because of the work requirements, instead of being able to go to the marketplace with subsidized coverage, they would not qualify for the subsidy. And there's no way that if you're on Medicaid today, tomorrow you can go onto the exchange and pay full freight. That's how you get to the 13.7 million people who will lose health care. The reason I said the work requirements is because this is sort of the core of the majority's messaging, right? That these are able-bodied people who should be able to go to work like the rest of us who are on private insurance, et cetera. But Georgia and Arkansas are two states that have these sort of work requirements in place. And what they've shown is that it's not that the majority of people who are on Medicaid who can work are working, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, the most vulnerable universe of people on Medicaid are those with long-term disabilities. So if people are able-bodied, they are generally working. It's a very high percentage of people that are working. The additional reporting requirements, right, is an additional administrative cost that actually is used to bump people off Medicaid because they're either they forgot to file the monthly or, however often the filing will be under either the state program or the federal program or requirement. People are just getting pushed off for administrative reasons, right? So I asked Republicans in committee, 13.7 million people are going to lose healthcare coverage. You're saying it's only able-bodied people that need to go into the workplace. But how many of those 13.7 million people are going to be bounced from Medicaid because of reporting requirements, like what we saw in Georgia, right? And they didn't have a number, right? They don't know. And they acknowledged in committee that the approach in Georgia was not the right one. So they didn't follow Georgia for these additional reporting requirements. They are just making it up. So there's no proof or data that it will keep the right people on Medicaid and bounce off these able-bodied people. They don't know, and they're making this decision. The second point I made in committee is they would keep saying, we're not kicking people off Medicaid, we're shifting people off Medicaid. Well, where are they going? Right? These are some of the most vulnerable people. So when you say shift, well, where are you shifting them to? And there's no answer, especially because of the lack of support that they would have on the ACA exchange. So these are the types of conversations that we're having. In my opinion, Republicans just want to put their head in the sand and think this is all going to work out. But the back of the envelope point for me, as you mentioned earlier, they're not just doing Medicaid to make the program better. They're doing it as part of this reconciliation package, right? So they need to offset the lack of revenue that we're going to have from the extension of the original Trump tax cuts, right? Who, as you correctly pointed out, disproportionately impacts the highest income earners in our country, right? Starting at the 0.01%, not even the 1%, the 0.01%. And so because they're pairing them together, they have to cut funding for things like Medicaid, which serves as a lifeline for so many Americans, to pay for the tax cuts that they're giving largely to the people who need it the least. So my point to any sort of, person who's thinking about this and listening to both sides is if you really want to make healthcare better in this country and you really think that there's savings in Medicaid, right? Why not reinvest it into Medicaid, right? To make the program better, right? Or to ensure that those people with long-term disabilities have the quality of life that they deserve, right? Like not putting the money back in, but using it to offset tax cuts just shows the priorities of the majority. And I just don't see how it improves lives for Americans. And that's where I struggle every day to work with my Republican colleagues, because I really do believe that this is misguided.
Yeah. Well, Rob, you're really busy, obviously, with all these issues that you're dealing with. I just want to thank you for making the time for
Yeah,
having this
thanks.
really important discussion and sharing these issues. And thanks again for your leadership. It's an honor to have you join us today on Coffee with Cohen. And thanks for all you're doing. And it's great to have you as a partner in Washington for Hoboken and all of New Jersey.
No, thanks for all that you do, Phil, and thanks for having me on. And look forward to continuing to partner together. There's a lot of issues that we have that we're both hearing from our constituents, and look forward to continue to drive results together for all those who call Hoboken home.
That's great. Well, I have a few more local updates to go through, and you're more than free to leave. But thanks for everything, Rob. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Phil. Take
Bye.
care.
Yep. All right. So thanks again to Congressman Menendez. Wanted to talk about some flood protection updates to let you know what's going on there. This is a new flood pump that was just installed. You can see the piece of equipment right over here. It is one of 5 new stormwater pumps that were installed in Resilient City Park. This critical project, completed in partnership with the City of Hoboken and North Hudson Sewage Authority and Congressman Menendez, who has just left us, significantly expands our ability to manage stormwater and protect our community during heavy rain events. The pumps, part of NHSA's long-term sewer infrastructure plan, can move up to 30 million gallons of water a day, reducing the risk of street and basement flooding. I think that is Assemblyman Ramirez. I think that's her there. And there's Mayor Bala and officials. It's Director Wolf from North Hudson Sewage Authority that's there. These pumps work with a 1 million gallon underwater storage tank beneath Resilient City Park, which is a major component of Hoboken's comprehensive flood mitigation strategy. The city's major investments, supported by $58 million in federal infrastructure funding, is transforming Northwest Hoboken and the Fifth Ward. Alongside green infrastructure and additional sewer updates on Adams Street, you've probably noticed a street closure on Adams between 13th and 14th, and Madison between 9th and 10th. We're comprehensively addressing climate change and flood resiliency in a manner that is a national model. This is in addition to our resiliency parks. Here is an overhead view of Northwest Resiliency Park right when it opened. Porous got there's Southwest Resiliency Park. Rain gardens. Pictures rain gardens. One hard at work. There's another rain garden. Porous pavement, green roofs, countless other flood mitigation measures are really making a difference. Over the past decade, Hoboken has seen an over 85% reduction in flooding events. These amazing results are a credit to our former mayor, Dawn Zimmer, and current mayor, Ravi Bala's unwavering focus on sustainability and long-term resiliency for our community. And I am proud to partner with Mayor Zimmer on this, and also partnering with Mayor Bala's administration on these really important issues. Talked a little bit with Congressman Menendez, actually quite a bit, about helicopters. Here's a picture of a helicopter low flying right by Marine View Plaza. I've mentioned some of the work that I did in the picture of me testifying from the Senate. And again, I want to thank Senator Stack, Senator Mukherjee for their local leadership in passing out of committee S-275. Congressman Menendez mentioned the letter that the communities received, the city council received. This is from Eastern Region Helicopter Council, alerting us to a 60-day closure of a runway at Newark Airport on April 15th. You notice the letter is dated April 29th, 2 weeks after it happened. It wraps up by saying, let us know if you have any questions, need any information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So I took them up on it, wrote them a letter where I thanked them for the letter. I noticed that it was late. Why we weren't given advance notice of the runway closures when clearly the operators of the heliports knew that this was happening, and asking specifics. We want information about what the flight path would be, like to know, how they're going to assist us, and refer to the Hoboken City Council's emergency resolution, which called for the industry to reroute its flights. This is what I wrote here on April 16th. In our April 16th unanimous resolution of Hoboken City Council, quote, it calls on the operators of Kearney HHI Heliport and other operators of New Jersey airports to ban said non-essential helicopter flights or immediately alter helicopter flight paths to avoid all densely populated residential communities and prioritize public safety above commercial tourism interests. Instead, this letter basically says it's going to be bad for at least another 6 weeks, and you're just going to have to suck it up. So, I was hoping that they would engage with me. I got an email a few hours later from Mr. Smith, who's the chair of the helicopter lobbying group, ERHC, Eastern Region Helicopter Council. And, I noted a lot of self-congratulatory language that was in their email response. Quote, for over 4.5 decades, the ERHC has remained committed to finding balanced, thoughtful solutions that allow our industry to operate safely and responsibly. Safety is and always has been our top priority. We understand that helicopter noise is a genuine concern for some residents, and we do not take that lightly. In fact, after safety, noise mitigation has become a leading focus of our work. Our voluntary efforts over the years to improve flight paths, limit flight hours, and respond to community input have earned us recognition from both regulators and advocacy groups. So in my letter, after pointing out that they pat themselves on the back, I note they haven't provided any specific information in response to my reasonable requests. They never gave us detailed information about the so-called temporary impacts of closing the Newark Airport runway 22R/4L. No maps, no flight paths. They also said I sought a constructive response to our resolution, which calls for them to change their flight paths. No response whatsoever. I gave examples of the kinds of things they could have done. Sharing improved flight paths that do not fly over or near densely populated communities. Sharing, quote, limits on flight hours, as you referenced in your email. Sharing noise mitigation efforts that your email references as, quote, a leading focus of your work. You have not yet provided any of this requested information to the Hoboken City Council. That letter is dated May 5th. Here we are 2 weeks later, still no answer. I point out they claim that they have a reputation for safety. I said they have a reputation for aggressively lobbying against any regulation of their non-essential operations. And finally, they say that they're open to a constructive dialogue. The email they wrote, quote, they remain open to constructive dialogue if members of the Hoboken City Council would like to meet to discuss these matters further. I invited them to our city council meetings, the one that was happening that week on May 7th, and one that's happening this week. I asked them if they would join the city council meeting this month. No answer whatsoever. So, again, thank you to Congressman Menendez for doing his part and really sustaining the focus on these issues on a federal basis. Thanks to Senator Stack and Senator Mukherjee and the members of the New Jersey Senate. And frankly, thanks to the Jersey City Council and to my colleagues in the Hoboken City Council for unanimously supporting these initiatives. I think they're important. Speaking of important, I am the chair of the Hoboken City Council's Administration and Finance Subcommittee. We will be hosting 2 virtual budget workshops for the Hoboken municipal budget. You can learn more about fiscal year 2025 municipal budget that was introduced earlier in the month. The budget prioritizes infrastructure improvements, climate resiliency, open space enhancements, quality of life improvements while maintaining fiscal responsibility. Each director will present their budget to the council and the public and answer questions. Thursday, May 22nd from 6 to 9, there will be presentations from the Administration and Finance, the City Clerk, Corporation Council, Department of Parks, Recreation, and Public Works, and the Department of Transportation and Parking. And there will also be another the day after Memorial Day. next Tuesday from 6 to 9. Department of Community Development, Department of Climate Action and Innovation, Water Utility, and the Department of Public Safety. I'm going to have a link in my comments section where you can join these budget workshops. And finally, not quite finally, almost finally, two more things to raise with you. One is imagining a new future for Hoboken's former Y at 13th and Washington Street. We're looking to see if the city and the leaders of the Y can transform the Y facility into a modern 21st century community rec center. The building opened in 1927. It served many generations of Hoboken residents before it closed in 2010. The city council unanimously approved a resolution to work with leadership of the Hoboken Community Center to transform 37,000 square foot space, which includes indoor pool, basketball court, and there will be a process for public engagement to get this done. We have been told and are planning to not impede any of the Hoboken Community Center's vital work in providing affordable housing for 96 low-income men in the building. Those windows up there on the higher floors reflect a single room occupancy apartment, as well as the wonderful food pantry that provides food to over 4,300 households. So that will continue. And I think that's an exciting thing. I look forward to seeing what's next in the next chapter for Hoboken's Y. And finally, the Hoboken Uptown Farmers Market is back under the viaduct in its old home. It opened up in May. I think it was the first weekend of May. I was out there. It was great to see a lot of friendly faces back there, a lot of vendors, folks who you know and love, Pickalicious, Stony Hill Farms, the anchor tenant where this woman is shopping for her vegetables from a few years ago. We've got Cotton Cattle, Choco Pan. We've got some new vendors like Babka Bailout, woman-owned business, local business. There's local French cheese businesses. There's all kinds of wonderful stuff every Saturday through December from 9 to 1 under the viaduct. Come on out, check out the farmers market, and don't forget the live music. They do a great job booking local artists who perform there. And that brings us to the end of my 109th Coffee with Cohen community event. Again, I want to thank Congressman Rob Menendez for making the time. You heard how busy and engaged he is. Really value the fact that he joined us today. I want to thank him and his office for helping make this happen. And off to a city council meeting tonight, and we'll be back with Coffee with Cohen in a few weeks. Look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everybody. Until next time.